Okay, session 2 of cohort 3 on the 5th day. I'd like to introduce Peter Shiau of Blockstack.
Great, thanks Robert. Appreciate the time and attention for everyone today. So I'm from a company called Blockstack, as was referenced briefly in Tim's presentation before. And we're blockchain software for financial services companies and enterprises in general. Just very quickly about myself. I'm old, I've been in the tech industry for a long time. I've done a lot of different companies, both startups as well as enterprises. I think the most relevant part of my bio is really at the end. So I spent 4 years at a bank called Standard Chartered Bank in their technology and innovation office in San Francisco. And one of the areas that I was responsible for covering was cryptocurrencies. So back in 2013, I started looking into it, learning about it, went through the whole ups and downs of this isn't going to work, this might work, and actually, wow, this actually is going to be really important. So led me to leave the bank, because if something's going to revolutionize your business, you should get off the track and not let it hit you. Let train hit you. So went and started this company called Blockstack. I just want to point out really quickly, members of my team, in particular for folks who are developers, you might want to go check out the CTO and CEO of the company's founder. His name is Moran Cooperman. His GitHub handle is devrandom, and he is a Bitcoin contributing developer. And his major projects are Gideon, Bitcoin J, and Ethereum J. So just so you know, we have some Bitcoin development chops in our organization. Lior Sar is another member of the team who just brings general product management experience. Other couple of members of the team, Phil Harris, who is a co-founder and responsible for business development. He's former NASDAQ. And just for full disclosure, Raja Ramachandran, he's an advisor of the company. He sits over there. We'll be talking a little bit later.
What's the GitHub handle?
I'm sorry?
What's the GitHub handle?
DevRandom. It is DevRandom. I'm happy to talk more about this after the talk. So really quickly, what are we doing? We're trying to transform financial services with blockchain software. I think the key thing, and follow on with what Tim's discussion was before, is that we're creating an enterprise software stack for private blockchains. So I think there was some discussion between permissioned and permissionless, and so we're very much in the permissioned space. And to even make that more strict, we're in what we call we're creating private isolated chains. So basically, blockchains that are being run and operated by a set of institutions for a specific application or purpose. And the value of our software stack is that we take care of all of the complexity around creating these blockchain-based systems and putting a simple developer environment for you to build these applications quickly and easily. Feel free to stop me if you have any questions along the way. So just to put some context around why do you want such a system, is that in the past there are a lot of technologies that everyone starts with and knows, but eventually you just want to get to the application. So over time you have systems like Apama, which is for financial services, Heroku in Docker, which you might be more familiar with, to make it a lot easier to build what you want to build, which is the applications, the business applications, and not deal with the underlying infrastructure, in particular around blockchain technology. So that's the problem that we're trying to solve. We're focused on financial services first, because that seems to be where the interest is in. But we're also talking to healthcare organizations, and the platform itself is pretty broad. It isn't specific to financial services. It can be used for anything that would benefit from, again, a private blockchain system where information needs to be immutable and shared. So just a quick kind of marketing slide, we let you focus on your application. So we take care of what we call the blockchain plumbing. And I'll talk a little bit more about what functions we offer as part of our development stack. But all the stuff that you're learning today, I think is extremely useful. It gives you the right framework. But when you're building an application or you're building a new business, you just want to get to the job of accelerating the building of your business and the building of application, and not necessarily have to deal with all the infrastructure that's underneath. So I think for this crowd, I pulled out these 4 salient functions of the block stack. So I'll just go through each one of them one by one. So the first one is the obvious one, is a private ledger. And we call it Bitcoin inspired. So it's based off of Bitcoin Core, but what we have done is modified it so that it can be operated and managed more easily in a private, privately hosted way. We've also made some enhancements to it to enable high transaction volume and low latency. We have the concept of an asset issuer. We talked about, there are lots of protocols out there like open assets, but we have our own flavor of that to make it easier to trade assets using multi-signature technology. And then we have transaction management, so it allows for complicated transactions between different counterparties that are relevant for financial services. And then the last piece is security. So we have rules management and enforcement, again based upon multi-signature technology. So what we do, I think would be relevant for you guys, is we have a software stack. We have basically a licensed software model. So an institution or a group of institutions that want to build their own private blockchain, you can say, here you go, put it on your own data center, we'll help you configure it, and you run it on your own, we'll provide support for you. But for, I think, this group, we also have a hosted version of this service. So we will host a version, your own blockchain on our environment. Has the same functionality as one that you would host on your own, but you don't have to deal with calling IT. You don't have to spin up your own servers. We'll run that all for you as a private sandbox. It's not Heroku in the sense that we're not something that's going to scale to production. We think that any privately run blockchain that has real assets or information running over it isn't something that regulated industries like financial services or healthcare would want to outsource. So we sort of stop at that. Today, at least, we stop at that. But for you guys, if you're building applications, you probably know that it's a pain to build it either on the Bitcoin testnet or to roll your own if that's what you're trying to do. So we could take care of that for you and allow you to do things like take a snapshot and roll back. So if you're building an application, something breaks on testnet, weird things can happen on the Bitcoin testnet. Here on our block stack, you can just say, well, just revert to the previous state. So you can take snapshots of your work and just keep iterating on it. You can make changes to how your blockchain works. So there's a whole bunch of configurations that you can do because we're segregated from Bitcoin itself. So I'm trying to go through this really quickly, but I think, again, for the relevant for this meeting, I'm trying to pull back from my time at Standard Chartered in my innovation days. Is that what's the point of having this isolated chain, at least in the near term? And I think the real value is that there are a lot of applications that people are thinking about, but it's hard to build them. And I think that the killer apps around Bitcoin or blockchains in general, they're still out there. I don't think we've figured them out yet. And what we want to do is really try to accelerate that learning. Again, by just giving you the tools to build your applications and your companies, if that's what you want to do. And so I think what Blockstack.io in the short term will just provide ways for you to experiment. And this came from my time at Standard Chartered when I was working with a guy named Tom Chi. I don't know if anyone here is from Google or used to work for Google, but he was one of the guys at Google X. And he came up with this idea of rapid prototyping. Well, he didn't come up with it, he sort of formalized it at Google X. And the idea is basically what you want to do is maximize the rate of learning by minimizing the time to try ideas. And the story, there's some YouTube videos that you can see where he tells about the story. But the story he likes to tell a lot about is the time it took to create the first Google Glass prototype. Does anyone know? If you do know, don't shout it out. But does anyone know how long it took for them to prototype the first Google Glass? You try to know. Any guesses?
5 years.
5 years? Any other guesses?
A month.
A month? All right. I was good. It actually took them a day. So this is Larry Page. They kind of pull it all together. So the idea was not to build or prototype. That was, how do I display information from a device and have it be overlaid upon the real world? And the point is, they learned a lot from just building it in a day, and then they built another prototype the next day, and then again, and then again. And then it became something that looked like Google Glass that is familiar today. Now, was completely successful. I would argue commercially it wasn't successful, but the company itself learned a lot through this iterative process. And I think that's what's missing today in Bitcoin and blockchain development, is that there are these huge lifts. It's really hard to progress, especially in Bitcoin because of the headless governance structure of it. But it doesn't have to be that way. The technology is available for anyone to use. It just needs to be packaged, I think, in the right way so that people can understand how it works, build in their own little sandbox, and once they discover their killer app, then they can find the best way to express it, whether it's in a private chain amongst a set of known counterparties, or on a public chain like Bitcoin. So I went through that really quickly, but I just wanted to give you a brief overview of what Blockstack's all about, and we'll answer some questions over the panel. Yeah, go ahead.
Question. So let's take a scenario where you can install it in, let's say, Citibank.
Sure.
So you'll have these servers
Mhm.
which will be running on the Blockstack in a firewall environment, which is
Yep.
secure,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And that so you're saying that your system can run within that
Yes,
firewall secure environment,
that's right.
and also can call another node
That's right.
from another branch
Sure.
to that.
Yeah, that's correct.
Can you summarize?
Yeah, so basically the question that, or the statement that's being clarified is, you can take this blockchain technology and run it within your own data center behind your existing security systems. And that can operate within your own data centers, or if you're using this as a distributed ledger amongst multiple parties, which is a more, I think, interesting use case. You can have host-to-host connections with other institutions that you might be sharing this ledger with. So I think that you can have Citibank, JP Morgan, whoever else.
Right.
There are systems today that already interconnect these institutions. You can use the same technology to share a ledger for a specific application, for a specific purpose, and in this secure environment.
Or maybe with vendors or other third parties that are
Correct.
interested in the business model, right?
That's right. That's right.
Huh.
Sorry.
Are you able to share what the use case or use cases that the banks are most excited about using this for?
Mostly it's been around clearing and settlement, but I think
Just for bank-to-bank payments?
just for bank-to-bank payments.
So you say you're based originally on the Bitcoin. So are you basically using the ECB? You're basically using the same crypto, the
Yep.
same things.
We've not changed any of the underlying protocols of Bitcoin. So the reason we've done that is we want to stay as close to the open source community as possible, because it's still moving forward. There's still really great innovations that are happening on that. So as those innovations are happening, like with Blockstream and sidechain elements, or what other companies that I come out with, then we can roll those in. All of the stuff that we're doing is at a level above what Bitcoin is.
So you're using their virtual machine and thus you're limited to the opcodes in the current, or have you added some of the optional?
I'm the wrong person to ask about that. So I can connect you with Moran, which I think you probably would get along with, and have that level of conversation. Yeah, so.
If you go back to the slides where you have APIs, business rules, right? So again, the use case which you talked about was different entities, like different interbank or interbank, right? So the business rules has to be agreed upon.
Sure.
In the case of clearing and settlement, right?
Yep.
And you guys will author the business rules.
No.
No.
The participants in the network
Will
do that.
author the business rules and
That's right.
agree upon.
That's right.
And finally, when the asset transfer happens, it goes
Through
the
private blockchain.
Okay.
So it's not connected to any public chain like Bitcoin or Ripple. It is a private, isolated blockchain created for the specific purpose amongst those sets of participants for a specific application. And business rules is sort of a broad term, but it is two things. One, what are the rules that govern the system? So that's, I think, what Tim mentioned before, like what are the contracts? What are the contracts that all the parties have with each other? Right? Oh, did it start? So that's one set of rules. But another way to look at business rules is authorization of transactions. So again, we're based on multi-sig. We're based on multi-signature technology. So just really briefly, what that means is when there's a transaction between two parties, you need to get a digital signature from both. And there are many configurations of that. The most common is you need 2 out of 3 signatures to sign a transaction. But the way that our system works is that it can be many, many times that. So you can imagine, say, there's a transaction between 2 institutions. And for this transaction to move forward, I need 3 organizations in my side to review and authorize that to go forward. So maybe I need risk management to approve. I need operations to approve. I need the trading desk to approve. Each one of these entities can operate a part of the network to check business rules. And then if the business rules are right, then they will sign it and move forward. And that's true on both sides. Sorry.
Yeah, what you just said makes perfect sense to me. I mean, so is that essentially running from a smart contract type environment, or a banana, as Tim likes to say? Is the banana kind of doing it?
Well, I shy away from the term smart contracts.
Right.
I think it's a loaded term.
I get you.
So we have a process by which to automate the processing of transactions based on rules.
Right. I mean, it's a little more of a program than the basic
Yeah.
Bitcoin script that runs when you
Right.
when you
So you can do things. Yeah.
It's a program that kind of runs going to say if this happens, then something else in the protocol, maybe it'll move to the next multi-sig, or the next person in the multi-sig, and then if they give it the digital, it'll automatically move to the next person, kind of like a workflow.
Well, I mean, it can be as complicated as you want it to be, and if you want to sequence it, that's possible.
Right. Okay.
So one of the things that we talk about is, there are you can have different classes of signatures. So say, you need a signature from the risk group, and there are 100 private keys. So I need one of those.
Right.
Or I need the CEO's key.
Right.
So you can create different scenarios.
The logic can kind of run
That's right.
that, right?
Yeah,
In the
exactly.
background.
Yeah,
To
absolutely.
automatically kind of do something.
Yes.
It's kind of what part of your value proposition.
Yes. So we
Okay.
enable that. We don't write the rules. We
Yep.
create a scripting environment for you
Yes,
to create
gotcha.
those rules.
Yep. That's awesome.
Is it revocable or any kind of transaction? What happens if some?
So it's a blockchain. So
Okay.
it's immutable.
Immutable, right?
So it's not revocable, but you can create a reversing transaction
Okay.
in the future.
So just one more question about the demand. So are you seeing a specific category of payments that banks are most excited about this on? Like, for example, national banks, or is it potentially anybody they're making large payments to? Like, what's the Like, where's the kind of the energy right now?
It sort of runs the gamut, and I don't want to get into too much detail in terms of what the specific use cases are. But there are lots of inefficiencies in the settlement of transactions between multiple parties, and so that's the specific back office function that we're targeting. So everything that we're doing is not consumer facing. We're purely an infrastructure play. So anything that helps make the back office function run more smoothly, like getting digital signatures to authorize transactions to move forward, to have a shared ledger amongst different counterparties so that these things can move instantly, or at least in very T0, for example. Those are the problems that we're tackling. That's a pretty broad space though, so it runs clearing, settlement, payments, remittances, registry of assets. I mean, it runs the whole gamut. So I wouldn't say it's really converged on anything, but I think it's really gotten clearer that there is value in having shared ledgers amongst known, trusted counterparties for specific applications. I think there was someone. Did you want to?
One last question.
Something?
I missed something, but how are the nodes coming to a consensus in this private blockchain?
If you could repeat the question.
Yeah. So how are the nodes coming to a consensus in a private blockchain? So, so there is a class. Again, I'm not the right person. So like I guess Paxos, specifically Paxos, where you can create consensus without proof of work, and I think there are other companies that are attacking this in a similar way, where what you want is consensus of the nodes, not necessarily proving that a single node has done the work.
Okay. Thanks, Peter.
Sure.
Bring up Tim and Rajachandran.